Hi, in our previous video we looked at some basic form element types, short answer, long answer, multiple choice, check boxes, and drop down. And now we're going to look at some of the more unique types available to us. I'll click the add question icon, and this time I'm going to choose linear scale. And I've filled that in. You'll notice that I have a scale here from 1 to 5. It doesn't need to be from 1 to 5. It could start at 0. Let's leave it at 1. And it could go all the way up to 10 if you prefer. Using odd numbers is one choice, so 1 to 5, but with rating type questions like this, you may find you get an unusual number of 3s right in the middle. So one theory on this type of question is simply to keep the number even, and therefore you're forcing someone to say if it's slightly above or slightly below the norm. So let's just say that our options here range from poor to excellent, and the choice of the labels for these endpoints is totally up to you. You can use your imagination. It doesn't always have to be rating good to bad. It can be something else as well. So you have to decide what that's going to be. And your only option here is to add a description if you'd like. Okay, you can make it required. So this is where they have to make a selection. And let's do that for now. Next type of question we'd like to look at is something called a multiple choice grid. And this is unique really to Google Forms and can be very, very useful. So let's try one of those. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I've saved some time. Please rate the following applications for usefulness, and I'm telling them here that they have to make one selection for each row. But when it comes to columns, they can't choose the same answer twice. So you'll see how this applies to this particular form element of this particular question. So I'm going to say Google Docs will be in row 1. Google Sheets will be row 2. Google Slides will be row 3. And Google Forms will be row 4. Now in my columns, I'm going to put best, second best, third best, fourth best. Now in order to enforce these directions that I've given here, I'm going to have to require one response per row. So they have to make a selection for each of these 4 things. But I'm also going to set it to limit one response per column. And then to check it out, how it works, we're going to go to Preview. Since I do have some required fields in here, let me just fill out first name and last name. I think the only other required one is this one. So if I try to pick Google Docs, there's one response per row, that's fine. And Google Forms, let's try this. Please don't select more than one response per column. So let me say that Google Forms is the best. Google Docs is the second best. Google Sheets is the third best. Nope, still a problem. And there you go. So this allows me to have students rate these things in order with unique ratings for each one of them, not allowing them to pick the same level or the same rating for both. That's one application of this. You certainly don't have to enforce those particular things. I mean, I could uncheck this and change these around a little bit. I can say this is great, good, fair, and poor. And with my current settings, I can now say that they are all great. and that would be fine. No errors, no warnings. Okay, another question would be a date field. And if I want to collect a date field, and there you go. This just allows them to use this little calendar icon to pick a particular date. Now, if I don't want to include the year, I'm going to have to come into the settings and uncheck that because it is checked by default, but I can do that. I can, you know, in a birth date, it could be 9/15. If I want to know when they were actually born, I would include the year as well. And they can type in this box as well as using the calendar, so they don't have to you know, scroll back through 20 years or 50 years or whatever it is. You can include the time as an option. And that's pretty much it for date. Let's add one more and say time, just to take a look at it, very similar to date. Okay, and your options under there are either time, straight time, or duration. And duration is how long you do something as opposed to a specific time. But let's go back to time there. And those are your basic elements for collecting data. I'd like you to notice that as we were submitting things, as we were creating these actually, if I'm selected on a particular field and I add a new question, it's going to go immediately below that question. So let me trash this one. If I don't want them creating at the top, if I want a question right after this open-ended question, that's fine. If I'm clicked on it, my next multiple choice comes right below there, and of course I can always change the type of question that it is. The other thing that you can do is, if you don't like the order of your questions, is simply grab it here and slide it to where you want it. So reordering these questions is very, very easy, and that applies also to these other elements that we're going to look at in our next video.